Alex Carter dragged his worn duffel bag across the polished floor of Haven Prime's spaceport. The bag's zipper had broken 3 systems ago, and he kept one hand pressed against it to prevent his belongings from spilling out. Around him, beings from across the galaxy moved with purpose and confidence. Tall Draknari warriors strode past with their scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lights. Mentari diplomats floated silently, their large eyes scanning thoughts that Alex couldn't imagine. Even the mechanical robotech moved with more grace than he managed. Alex checked the crumpled acceptance letter in his pocket for the 5th time. Galactic University, Haven Prime campus. Full scholarship for military history studies. He still couldn't believe they had chosen him from thousands of applicants across human space. The letter felt real enough, but walking through this magnificent station made everything seem like a dream. A group of Draknari students passed by, their conversation loud and boastful. One noticed Alex struggling with his bag and said something in their native tongue that made the others laugh. Alex didn't need translation to understand the mockery. He kept walking, his worn sneakers squeaking against the floor. The university shuttle waited at docking bay 12. Alex found a seat in the back, away from the clusters of students who already seemed to know each other. Most appeared wealthy, with expensive clothing and the latest personal devices. Alex touched the old tablet in his jacket pocket, its screen cracked from years of use. During the short flight to the university, Alex listened to conversations around him. Students discussed their families' achievements, their homeworld's politics, and their plans for galactic careers. A Mentari girl named Lyra mentioned her father's position in the diplomatic corps. A human boy from the core worlds bragged about his family's shipping empire. Alex stayed quiet, staring out the window at Haven Prime's surface. The university sprawled across several floating platforms connected by bridges that spanned the clouds. Buildings rose like crystal spires, their surfaces reflecting the light of Haven Prime's twin suns. Gardens hung in the air between structures filled with plants from hundreds of worlds. Alex had never seen anything so beautiful. His dormitory assignment led him to Residential Block 7, Level 15. The room was small but clean, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a window overlooking the eastern gardens. His roommate hadn't arrived yet, so Alex chose the bed near the wall and began unpacking his few possessions. He placed his books carefully on the desk. Most were old editions he had found in second-hand shops on Earth's outer colonies. Military history, tactical analysis, strategic planning. Other students would probably consider them boring. But Alex found comfort in understanding how great leaders had shaped galactic events. Among his clothes, Alex found the photograph he always carried. The image showed a man in military uniform standing beside a woman holding a young child. The man's face was strong and serious, his uniform bearing insignia that Alex had never been able to identify. The woman smiled warmly, her hand resting on the child's shoulder. Alex couldn't remember either of them, but the photograph was the only connection to his past before the orphanage. "Hey there, roommate." Alex turned to see a young Draknari standing in the doorway. Unlike the warriors at the spaceport, this one seemed friendly, his scales a lighter shade of green that indicated youth among his species. He carried expensive luggage and wore clothing that marked him as nobility. "I'm Corvin," the Draknari said, extending a clawed hand. "Corvin Thane of the Western Territories. And you must be the human they assigned me." Alex shook the offered hand carefully. Draknari's strength could easily crush human bones, but Corvin's grip was gentle. "Alex Carter." From Earth's colonial regions, Corvin began unpacking with efficient movements. His belongings included ceremonial weapons, family banners, and devices Alex couldn't identify. "Earth's colonies, eh? Which sector?" "My family has trade agreements with several human systems." "Outer Rim," Alex said simply. He didn't mention that he had grown up on 3 different worlds as the orphanage moved him between facilities. "Nothing important." "Nonsense," Corvin said. "Every world has its importance. That's what I'm here to learn. Galactic relations and cultural studies. My father says understanding other species is the key to successful leadership." He paused, studying Alex. "What about you? What brings a colonial human to the most expensive university in known space?" Alex hesitated. The truth was complicated. His test scores had been exceptional, but his background was mostly blank. The scholarship letter had arrived without explanation, along with travel documents and enough credits to reach Haven Prime. "Military history," he said finally. "I want to understand how great leaders shaped the galaxy." Corvin's eyes brightened. Excellent. We'll have much to discuss. My people have a rich military tradition. Perhaps I can share some stories that aren't in your human textbooks. Over the following days, Alex began attending classes. The university's scale amazed him. Lecture halls could hold thousands of students from dozens of species. Professors included some of the galaxy's greatest minds, from Mentari philosophers to robotech engineers. Alex felt overwhelmed but determined to prove he belonged. His favorite class was Advanced Military Strategy, taught by Professor Wells, a grizzled human veteran with scars across his face and metal implants replacing his left arm. Wells had fought in the Centauri Wars decades ago and brought real experience to his lectures. During the first week, Wells presented historical battles for analysis. Alex found himself raising his hand frequently, offering insights that surprised both the professor and other students. When Wells described the Battle of Proxima Station, Alex immediately identified the winning strategy's key weakness. When they studied the siege of New Babylon, Alex explained how the defenders could have held out indefinitely with better resource management. Other students began to notice. The Mentari girl Lyra watched Alex carefully during discussions, her large eyes seeming to probe for hidden thoughts. A human student named David from the Core Worlds challenged Alex's analyses, but Alex's explanations were always logical and well-reasoned. Corvin noticed the change in how others viewed his roommate. "You're making quite an impression," he said one evening as they studied in their room. That analysis of the Rigel campaign today was brilliant. Even Professor Wells seemed surprised. Alex looked up from his tablet where he was reading about ancient Earth military doctrine. It just made sense. The Rigel defenders made the same mistake that cost the Romans their empire thousands of years ago. They spread their forces too thin trying to hold everything instead of concentrating on what mattered. "Romans?" Corvin asked. "Ancient Earth warriors," Alex explained. They conquered most of their world before falling to barbarian invasions. Their early success came from discipline and tactical flexibility, but they lost those advantages when their empire grew too large. Corvin studied his roommate with new interest. Most humans their age knew little about their species' ancient history, focusing instead on the recent colonial expansion period. Alex spoke about historical warfare with the passion most students reserved for entertainment or romance. "How do you know so much about military history?" Corvin asked. Alex shrugged, not looking up from his reading. "Books. I've always found it interesting how small decisions by individual leaders can change the fate of entire civilizations." What Alex didn't mention was how natural military thinking felt to him. When he read about famous battles, he could visualize the terrain, understand the commander's decisions, and see alternative strategies that might have worked better. It was as if he had inherited an instinctive understanding of warfare that he couldn't explain. As weeks passed, Alex settled into university life. He remained quiet and studious, but his insights in military classes earned respect from professors and fellow students. He started to believe he might actually belong at Galactic University, that his strange scholarship and mysterious past didn't matter, as long as he could prove his worth through knowledge and hard work. He had no idea that across the galaxy, old enemies and former allies were beginning to take notice of a young human whose tactical thinking reminded them of someone they thought was dead. Emergency sirens wailed across Haven Prime as red warning lights bathed the university in crimson shadows. Alex bolted upright in his bed, instantly alert despite having been asleep moments before. His body moved with trained precision, reaching for clothes and shoes before his mind fully processed what was happening. Corvin stumbled around their room, his natural Draknari night vision giving him an advantage in the dim emergency lighting. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. "Pirate attack," Alex said, pulling on his boots. The knowledge came to him without conscious thought. The same way he knew which direction led to the nearest escape pods, and how long it would take security forces to respond. "They're targeting the research station." "How do you know that?" Corvin asked, but Alex was already moving toward their room's communication panel. The main screen flickered to life, showing Professor Wells's scarred face. Behind him, Alex could see the chaos of the university's emergency command center. "All students are to report to designated shelter areas immediately," Wells announced. "This is not a drill. We have confirmed hostile vessels approaching the research platform." Alex studied the tactical display visible behind Wells. 3 ships, medium-class raiders. approaching from the system's asteroid belt. They had waited until the regular patrol was on the far side of Haven Prime before making their move. Smart timing, but they had underestimated the research station's defensive capabilities. "Come on," Corvin said, grabbing Alex's arm. "We need to get to the shelters." Alex shook his head, his eyes still fixed on the display. "The research station has experimental shield generators. If the pirates break through the outer defenses, they'll try to disable the shields instead of destroying them. That technology is worth more than anything else they could steal." "How do you possibly know about classified research?" Corvin demanded. Alex didn't answer because he couldn't explain it himself. Information seemed to flow into his mind from sources he didn't understand. Military protocols, defensive strategies, even the psychological profiles of pirate crews all felt as familiar as his own memories. The communication panel chimed with an incoming message on a frequency Alex recognized but shouldn't have known existed. He answered without thinking. "Alex Carter," he said. A gruff voice responded from the speakers. "Kid, this is Commander Hayes on the research station. Our tactical officer just got injured in the first attack. Professor Wells says you've got a head for military strategy. We need help coordinating our defenses." Corvin stared at Alex in shock. "They want a student to help command a battle?" Alex's mind was already analyzing the situation. "Commander Hayes, what's your current defensive status?" 3 ships incoming. We've got defensive turrets and fighter support, but they're using some kind of jamming system that's interfering with our coordination." "Standard pirate tactic," Alex said, his voice taking on a tone of authority that surprised both him and Corvin. "They'll try to isolate your defensive systems and pick them off individually. You need to switch to backup communication frequencies and coordinate a concentrated defense at grid reference 7 Alpha. "How do you know our grid system?" Hayes asked suspiciously. Alex paused, realizing he had used classified military terminology without thinking. "Lucky guess," he said quickly. "Look, the important thing is concentration of force. Don't let them divide your attention." Over the next hour, Alex found himself effectively commanding the research station's defense from his dormitory room. His suggestions were unconventional but effective. When the pirates tried to jam communications, Alex recommended using the university's academic network to relay tactical information. When enemy fighters attempted to strafe the station's shield generators, Alex predicted their attack pattern and helped position defensive turrets for maximum effectiveness. Corvin watched in amazement as his quiet roommate transformed into a military strategist. Alex's voice remained calm and professional as he coordinated complex defensive maneuvers, spoke with veteran officers as if he were their equal, and demonstrated knowledge of tactics that should have taken years of military training to master. "Alex," Corvin said quietly, during a brief pause in communications, "where did you learn to do this?" Alex looked at his roommate with confusion in his eyes. "I don't know," he admitted. "It just feels natural, like I've always known these things." The final phase of the battle tested Alex's strategic thinking. The pirates, frustrated by the effective defense, attempted a desperate assault on the research station's main laboratory. Alex realized they were targeting something specific, something valuable enough to risk their ships for. "Commander Hayes," Alex said urgently, "they're not after random technology. They know exactly what they want. Check your most classified projects. Something there is worth more than 3 ships and their crews." A long pause followed before Hayes responded, his voice grim. "How did you know?" "We've got a prototype faster-than-light communication device in Lab 7. If pirates got their hands on that technology—" "They won't," Alex said with confidence that surprised him. "Redeploy your fighters to Grid 8 Beta and have your turrets concentrate fire on the lead ship. The other 2 will break off when their leader goes down." Alex's prediction proved accurate. The coordinated assault destroyed the lead pirate vessel, and the remaining ships retreated into hyperspace. The research station was saved, but Alex's role in the victory raised questions he couldn't answer. Later that night, as Haven Prime's moons rose over the university, Alex sat alone on his dormitory's observation deck. The battle was over, but his mind kept analyzing the engagement, seeing alternative strategies and improved tactics. It was as if his brain was hardwired for military thinking in ways that made no sense for an orphan from the outer colonies. Professor Wells found him there an hour before dawn. The older man's expression was troubled as he approached Alex's bench. "Mind if I sit?" Wells asked. Alex nodded, not trusting his voice. He had a feeling this conversation would change everything. Wells settled beside him with a grunt, his metal arm reflecting starlight. You did well tonight, son. Better than well. You coordinated a defense that saved hundreds of lives and prevented classified technology from falling into criminal hands. I just tried to help, Alex said quietly. No, Wells said firmly. What you did requires years of training and experience. You spoke like a veteran officer, used tactics I haven't seen since... He paused, studying Alex's face in the moonlight. Since the Centauri Wars. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. Professor, I don't understand what you're suggesting. Wells was quiet for a long moment. Tell me about your family, Alex, your real family. I don't have one, Alex said honestly. I grew up in colonial orphanages. The only thing I have from my past is an old photograph. Can I see it? Alex hesitated, then pulled the worn picture from his jacket pocket. Wells took it carefully, angling it to catch the light from Haven Prime's moons. The professor's intake of breath was sharp and sudden. His hands began to shake as he stared at the photograph. Professor? Alex asked nervously. What is it? Wells looked up at Alex with an expression of shock and something that might have been fear. This man in the uniform, he said slowly. I know him. We all knew him during the wars. Who is he? Alex asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Magnus Carter, Wells whispered. The most brilliant military commander humanity ever produced. The man who united Earth's colonies and struck fear into every enemy fleet in the galaxy. He paused, his scarred face pale. Magnus Carter, who disappeared 20 years ago and was presumed dead. Alex stared at the photograph with new eyes. The strong face, the confident stance, the uniform bearing mysterious insignia all suddenly made terrible sense. If this is your family, Wells continued, then you're not just any student. You're the heir to the most dangerous bloodline in human space. As if summoned by their conversation, Alex's personal communicator chimed with an incoming message on a frequency he had never heard before. The transmission was brief but clear. The heir lives. The Legion remembers. Magnus Carter's son will answer for his father's legacy. Alex stared at the device in shock. Across the galaxy, old enemies were awakening. The quiet student who had wanted nothing more than to study history was about to become history himself. Wells stood slowly, his expression grim. Alex, I think your peaceful university days just ended. There are people out there who have been waiting 20 years for this moment. Alex looked up at the stars, each point of light representing worlds where his father's name was either revered or cursed. He had wanted to be anonymous, to learn and grow without the weight of family legacy. Instead, he was about to discover that some bloodlines could never escape their destiny. 3 days after the revelation about his father, Alex tried to pretend his life could return to normal. He attended classes, completed assignments, and maintained his quiet demeanor. But everything had changed. Other students whispered when he passed in the hallways. Professors watched him with new interest during lectures. Even Corvin treated him differently, with a mixture of awe and uncertainty that made Alex feel more isolated than ever. The worst part was the dreams. Every night, Alex found himself commanding vast fleets in battles he had never fought, making strategic decisions with consequences that affected billions of lives. He would wake exhausted, his mind filled with tactical knowledge that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his own experience. During Professor Wells's military strategy class, Alex participated less frequently. His insights were still accurate, but he feared drawing more attention. When Wells presented the Battle of Titan Ridge for analysis, Alex recognized it immediately as one of his father's greatest victories. Though he had never studied the engagement before, Lyra, the Mentari student, approached him after class. Her large eyes seemed to shimmer with psychic energy as she studied his face. There's something different about your mind, she said without preamble. Mentari were known for their directness. I've been trying to read your thoughts since the semester began, but there are barriers I've never encountered before. Alex stepped back instinctively. I didn't know you were trying to read my mind. It's not intentional, Lyra explained. Mentari naturally sense the surface thoughts of other beings. It helps us communicate and understand emotions. But your mind feels like it's protected by military-grade psychic shielding. That's impossible, Alex said. I've never had any kind of mental training. Lyra tilted her head, studying him with the intensity her species was famous for. The barriers feel old, like they were installed when you were very young. Someone wanted to keep your thoughts hidden, even from yourself. Before Alex could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the university. Not the emergency sirens from the pirate attack, but the deeper, more ominous tones that indicated a serious threat. Students began moving quickly toward emergency stations, their faces tense with worry. Professor Wells's voice echoed through the communication system. All students and faculty are to remain in secure areas. We have confirmed arrival of multiple unidentified vessels in Haven Prime's outer system. Security forces are responding. Alex found himself moving against the flow of students heading toward the observation deck instead of the shelters. Something was drawing him there, an instinct he couldn't explain. Corvin followed, along with Lyra, who seemed fascinated by Alex's unusual behavior. The observation deck's main screen showed the tactical display of Haven Prime's defense grid. 5 ships had emerged from hyperspace at different entry points, their configurations unfamiliar but clearly military. As Alex watched, more vessels appeared surrounding Haven Prime in a coordinated pattern that spoke of careful planning. "Those aren't pirates," Alex said quietly, his mind automatically analyzing the fleet formation. "This is a military operation." "How many ships?" Corvin asked. Alex studied the display, counting vessels and identifying their probable capabilities based on their positioning. 15 total. 3 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, 4 support vessels. They're not here to attack the planet. They're here to prevent anyone from leaving, Lyra gasped. It's a blockade. But who would dare blockade a neutral educational world? The answer came through the communication system as an unfamiliar voice overrode the university's emergency broadcast. "Attention Haven Prime University. We are here for Alex Carter, son of Magnus Carter. Surrender the boy and no harm will come to your institution." Students throughout the observation deck turned to stare at Alex. He felt their eyes like physical weight, fear and curiosity mixing in their expressions. Some backed away from him, while others moved closer as if proximity to galactic notoriety was something to be coveted. "Who are they?" Corvin asked, his warrior instincts making him position himself protectively near Alex. Alex didn't know, but his mind was already working on the tactical problem. The blockade formation was too perfect, too professional for any random military force. These people knew what they were doing, which meant they had been planning this operation for a long time. Professor Wells appeared on the observation deck, his scarred face grim. Behind him walked 2 people Alex had never seen before but somehow recognized. A woman in her 50s with short gray hair and the bearing of a career military officer. A man about the same age with cybernetic implants around his left eye and scars that marked him as a veteran of serious combat. "Alex," Wells said quietly, "I'd like you to meet Colonel Sarah Blake and Commander Frank Torres. They served with your father during the Centauri Wars." The woman stepped forward, her eyes studying Alex with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You look like him," she said simply. "Same eyes, same way of standing when you're thinking about tactics." "We've been searching for you for 20 years, Commander Torres added. His cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Alex. "Your father made us promise to find you if anything happened to him." Alex felt overwhelmed by the flood of information and emotion. "I don't understand. What happened to my father? Where has he been all this time?" Colonel Blake's expression grew sad. "He's dead, Alex. Killed in the final battle of the Centauri Wars while ensuring a civilian evacuation succeeded. But before he died, he made arrangements to hide you to give you a chance at a normal life." "Normal," Alex repeated bitterly. "I've never felt normal. I dream about battles I've never fought. I know tactics I've never studied. I can coordinate military operations like I've been doing it for years." "That's his legacy," Torres explained. "Magnus Carter wasn't just a great military leader. He was a strategic genius who could see patterns and possibilities that others missed. That gift is in your blood, in your genes." The communication system crackled again with the voice from the blockading fleet. "We are running out of patience. Alex Carter will be surrendered within 6 hours, or we will begin bombardment of university facilities." Students throughout the observation deck began panicking. Some demanded that Alex surrender himself to protect everyone else. Others argued that the university should fight rather than give in to threats. The debate grew heated quickly, with species loyalty and personal fear creating dangerous tensions. Alex watched the chaos around him and felt something shift in his mind. The barriers Lyra had mentioned seemed to weaken, allowing suppressed memories and instincts to surface. He could see the tactical situation clearly now, understand the motivations of the mysterious fleet, and recognize the limited options available to Haven Prime's defenders. "Everyone be quiet," Alex said, his voice carrying an authority that silenced the arguing students. He moved to the tactical display, his hands dancing over the controls with practiced ease. The blockade formation appeared in three-dimensional detail, showing ship positions, probable capabilities, and strategic weaknesses. "They're not here to kill me," Alex announced, his voice calm and analytical. "If they wanted me dead, they would have started with orbital bombardment. They want me alive, which means they need something from me." "What could they possibly need from a student?" asked a robotech whose mechanical voice betrayed confusion. Alex studied the fleet positions again, his enhanced tactical instincts working through possibilities. "They're not random mercenaries or bounty hunters. This is a professional military operation with resources that suggest government backing. They know who I am, which means they know what my father was capable of." "They want to use you," Lyra said suddenly, her psychic abilities allowing her to sense the emotional undercurrents of the situation. "They think you have your father's knowledge, his strategic secrets." Colonel Blake nodded grimly. "Your father developed tactical innovations that changed how modern warfare is conducted. Some people believe those secrets died with him, but others think he passed them on to his son." Alex felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. He had wanted nothing more than to study history, to understand the past without being forced to shape the future. But bloodlines carried obligations that couldn't be ignored. "How long before Haven Prime's defense fleet arrives?" he asked Wells. 4 hours, the professor replied. "But they'll be outnumbered and outgunned." Alex nodded, his mind already working on the problem. He could surrender and hope that would satisfy the attackers. But military logic suggested they would eliminate witnesses afterward. He could fight, but that would put thousands of innocent students at risk. Or he could do what his father would have done. He could find a third option that no one expected. "I need access to the university's communication array," Alex said. "And I need someone to get me complete technical specifications for Haven Prime's defense grid." "What are you planning?" Corvin asked. Alex smiled, and for the first time since learning his identity, he felt truly confident. "I'm going to show them why the Carter name was feared across the galaxy. But I'm going to do it my way, not his." The quiet student was gone. In his place stood someone who was beginning to understand the terrible gift his father had left him. Alex stood in Haven Prime University's command center, surrounded by tactical displays showing the enemy blockade. 2 hours remained before the attacker's deadline. Around him, professors and security officials debated options while student volunteers helped coordinate evacuation procedures. But Alex wasn't listening to their arguments anymore. His mind was working on a problem that required thinking beyond conventional solutions. The enemy fleet commander had made a crucial mistake. He assumed Alex would react like a frightened student or surrender like a sensible civilian. He didn't expect Magnus Carter's son to think like a military strategist. "Colonel Blake," Alex said, interrupting a heated discussion about defensive positions, "I need you to send a message to the blockade commander. Tell him I'll surrender, but only if he meets me face-to-face on the university's main docking platform." "Absolutely not," Professor Wells objected. "That's exactly what they want." "No," Alex said calmly. "What they want is to capture me without having to fight for it. But they also want to demonstrate their power, show the galaxy that they can take Magnus Carter's son whenever they choose. That pride will make them agree to a personal meeting." Commander Torres studied Alex with his cybernetic eye. "What are you really planning?" Alex smiled, and the expression reminded everyone in the room of his father's legendary confidence. "I'm going to give them a choice. They can have Alex Carter the student, or they can face Magnus Carter's heir, but they can't have both." Within an hour, the enemy commander agreed to the meeting. His flagship, a massive heavy cruiser called the Iron Fist, moved into position above the university's main platform. Alex watched from the command center as the ship's shuttle bay opened and a diplomatic transport descended toward the meeting point. "He's bringing a full honor guard," Colonel Blake observed, studying the shuttle's passenger manifest. 12 elite soldiers plus his senior staff. "He's not taking any chances." "Good," Alex said. "The more people he brings, the more witnesses there will be to what happens next." Alex changed out of his student clothes into a simple black uniform, that Colonel Blake had retrieved from storage. It was similar to what his father had worn during the wars, though without any rank insignia or unit markings. When Alex looked at himself in the mirror, he barely recognized the person staring back. The uncertain student was gone, replaced by someone who carried himself with military bearing and tactical confidence. Corvin insisted on accompanying Alex to the meeting, along with Lyra and Professor Wells. "If you're walking into danger," the young Dreknari said, "you shouldn't go alone." "This isn't your fight," Alex warned. "Yes, it is," Lyra said firmly. "They threatened our university and our friends. Besides, I want to see what happens when someone tries to intimidate Magnus Carter's son." The main docking platform was normally used for ceremonial events and VIP arrivals. Today it felt like an arena, with the enemy shuttle landed at one end and Alex's small group approaching from the other. Security cameras recorded everything, broadcasting the confrontation to screens throughout the university and beyond. The enemy commander was exactly what Alex had expected. General Marcus Stone, formerly of the Earth Colonial Defense Force, now working as a mercenary for unnamed clients. His uniform was immaculate, his bearing perfect, and his expression confident. Behind him stood 12 soldiers in powered armor, weapons ready but not aimed. "Alex Carter," Stone said as the two groups met in the center of the platform. "You look remarkably like your father. I had the honor of serving under Magnus Carter before his unfortunate demise." "Honor," Alex repeated. "Is that what you call it when you betray everything he fought for?" Stone's expression hardened. "Your father was a great man, but he was also naive. He believed in ideals that have no place in the real galaxy. Power belongs to those strong enough to take it and smart enough to keep it. And you think kidnapping a student demonstrates strength? I think claiming Magnus Carter's heir demonstrates inevitability," Stone replied. "You can come with us willingly and be treated with respect, or we can take you by force. Either way, you're leaving Haven Prime today." Alex nodded thoughtfully as if considering the offer. "Before I decide, I have a question. Who hired you? Who wants Magnus Carter's son badly enough to risk attacking a neutral educational facility?" Stone smiled coldly. "Let's just say there are people in high places who believe you inherited more than your father's tactical genius. They think he passed along strategic secrets that could shift the balance of power in human space. And what if I told you they're right?" The admission clearly surprised Stone. His soldiers shifted nervously, their weapons coming up slightly. "Are you saying Magnus Carter shared classified information with his son?" "I'm saying," Alex replied, his voice carrying across the platform with absolute confidence, "that everything my father knew, I know. Every tactical innovation, every strategic insight, every military secret that made him the most feared commander in the galaxy. It's all here." He tapped his temple. "The question is whether you're prepared for the consequences of that knowledge." Stone's eyes gleamed with greed and ambition. "Surrender now and we'll discuss terms for sharing that information." Alex laughed, the sound echoing off the platform's walls. "General Stone, you've made the same mistake that every enemy commander made when facing my father. You assumed he would react the way you expected." "What are you talking about?" "You blockaded Haven Prime to prevent me from escaping," Alex explained, his voice taking on the tone of a military briefing. 15 ships in a perfect containment formation. Very impressive. But you also created a tactical situation where your forces are spread thin and focused on preventing exit, rather than defending against internal threats. Stone's expression shifted from confidence to concern. "What internal threats?" Alex smiled, and his friends realized they were seeing Magnus Carter's son embrace his heritage for the first time. "General, while you were positioning your ships to trap me, I was positioning mine to trap you." As if summoned by his words, new contacts appeared on the tactical displays visible throughout the platform. Ships emerged from behind Haven Prime's moons, rose from the planet's surface, and dropped out of hyperspace at carefully calculated coordinates. Not a fleet, but a coordinated network of vessels that had been moving into position while Stone focused on the university. "Impossible," Stone breathed. "There aren't any military forces in this system." "You're right," Alex said. "These aren't military vessels. They're cargo ships, passenger transports, research vessels, and private yachts. Every civilian ship in the system, coordinated through the university's communication network and positioned according to a tactical plan I developed while you were making your demands." Professor Wells stared at Alex in amazement. "How did you coordinate all this without anyone knowing?" I use the academic network to send navigation updates disguised as research data, Alex explained. Every ship captain in the system received new flight plans that happened to place them in optimal positions for a coordinated response. Stone was studying his tactical displays, his face growing pale as he realized the implications. Civilian ships can't threaten a military blockade. Individually, no, Alex agreed. But 50 civilian vessels moving in perfect coordination can create a tactical nightmare for any military commander, especially when they're being directed by someone who understands exactly how your blockade formation works. To demonstrate his point, Alex activated a communication device that broadcast to every ship in the system. All vessels execute pattern Delta 7. The civilian ships began moving with military precision, their courses designed to create maximum confusion for Stone's forces. Cargo haulers crossed the paths of military vessels, forcing evasive maneuvers. Passenger transports formed convoy lines that blocked optimal firing solutions. Research ships activated every scanner and communication array they possessed, flooding the area with sensor noise that degraded military targeting systems. "This is madness," Stone said, watching his carefully planned operation dissolve into chaos. "You're going to cause collisions." "No collisions," Alex said confidently. "Every movement is calculated to create maximum disruption with minimum risk. It's a tactical concept my father pioneered during the siege of New Geneva. Use the enemy's strengths against them." Stone's flagship was trying to maintain position while avoiding 3 civilian vessels that seemed determined to cross its path. His other ships were similarly harassed, their formation breaking apart as captains struggled to avoid accidents while maintaining tactical readiness. "Call off your ships," Stone demanded, "or I'll order my forces to fire on civilian targets." Alex's expression grew cold, and for a moment he looked exactly like his father during the darkest days of the wars. "General Stone, if you fire on unarmed civilians, you'll discover why Magnus Carter's enemies learned to fear his name. And unlike my father, I won't show mercy to anyone who threatens innocence." The threat was delivered quietly, but everyone on the platform felt its weight. Stone's soldiers shifted nervously, suddenly unsure whether they were capturing a student or confronting a military genius. "You can't win this," Stone said desperately. "My ships are still superior to your civilian fleet." "You're right," Alex admitted. "In a straight fight, you would destroy every civilian ship in the system. But this isn't a straight fight. This is a demonstration of what happens when someone with my father's knowledge chooses to stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like a commander." As if to emphasize his point, Haven Prime's defense fleet chose that moment to arrive from the outer system, their timing coordinated with Alex's plan. Suddenly, Stone found himself caught between a coordinated civilian response and approaching military vessels. His perfect blockade turned into a tactical disaster. "General," Alex said quietly, "I'm giving you one chance to withdraw with your forces intact. Leave Haven Prime immediately, and spread the word that Magnus Carter's son is not some helpless prize to be claimed. I'm exactly what my bloodline suggests, and anyone who threatens the people I care about will learn why my father's enemies still have nightmares about the Carter name." Stone looked around the platform, at the tactical displays showing his disintegrating formation, at Alex's calm confidence, and at the growing realization that he had walked into a trap set by someone who thought exactly like the legendary Magnus Carter. For the first time in years, General Stone chose retreat over pride. "This isn't over," he said as he signaled his forces to withdraw. "Yes, it is," Alex replied, "because now the galaxy knows that Magnus Carter's heir is awake." 6 months after the confrontation with General Stone, Alex Carter found himself standing before the Galactic Council on the neutral world of Unity Station. The massive chamber housed representatives from 47 different species, each delegation studying the young human who had become the most talked-about figure in known space. News of the Haven Prime incident had spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Recordings of Alex coordinating civilian ships against a military blockade played on every major news network. Military academies analyzed his tactics. Political leaders debated what the emergence of Magnus Carter's heir meant for galactic stability. Alex wore the uniform of the newly formed Haven Defense Corps, an organization he had established with backing from several human colonial governments. The simple blue and silver design carried no traditional military ornaments, instead bearing symbols that represented protection and cooperation rather than conquest. Alex Carter, announced the council speaker, a tall Mentari diplomat whose psychic abilities helped her maintain order among the diverse assembly. You stand before this body accused of unauthorized military action, endangering civilian lives and threatening established trade routes. How do you answer these charges? Alex stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sophisticated translation system. Honorable delegates, I answer that every action I took was in defense of innocent lives, threatened by an illegal military assault on a neutral educational facility. A Draknari general rose from his delegation's seats. You coordinated an attack using civilian vessels. This violates every military convention regarding non-combatant protection. General Korath, Alex replied, recognizing the officer from intelligence briefings. I coordinated a defensive action that prevented military casualties while protecting civilian lives. No shots were fired. No ships were destroyed. The only thing damaged was the reputation of those who thought they could threaten students with impunity. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as delegates discussed Alex's response. Some species had cultures that valued aggressive military action, while others preferred diplomatic solutions. Alex had managed to thread the needle between them, showing strength without causing unnecessary destruction. The concern, said Ambassador Chen from the Earth Colonial Alliance, is what your emergence means for galactic stability. Your father was both admired and feared throughout human space. His tactical genius helped humanity defend itself during the expansion wars, but his methods were sometimes considered excessive. Alex nodded respectfully to the human ambassador. My father lived in a time when humanity faced extinction if we didn't prove our strength. Today's galaxy is different. We have trade relationships, diplomatic protocols, and institutions like this council that can resolve conflicts through negotiation rather than warfare. Yet, you chose military action over diplomacy at Haven Prime, observed a Robotech diplomat whose mechanical voice carried perfect neutrality. I chose protection over surrender, Alex corrected. When someone threatens innocent lives, the time for negotiation ends. But I also chose precision over destruction, coordination over chaos, and strategic thinking over brute force. The Mentari speaker studied Alex with her large eyes, using her psychic abilities to sense the emotional undertones of his words. You speak of protection and precision, yet you carry your father's reputation. How do we know you won't follow his path toward military dominance? Alex had expected this question. His answer would determine not just his own future, but the relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Speaker Vale, he said, addressing her by name. My father's path was shaped by the threats humanity faced during the expansion period. Hostile aliens who saw us as invaders, competing species fighting for resources, and the chaos of a galaxy where military strength was the only protection for civilian populations. He gestured toward the assembled delegates. Look around this chamber. Draknari, Mentari, Robotech, and dozens of other species working together to solve problems through discussion rather than warfare. This is the galaxy my father helped create by proving humanity deserved a place among civilized species. And your role in this galaxy? Asked a delegate from the Outer Rim territories. To protect what he built, Alex said simply. The Haven Defense Corps isn't designed for conquest or expansion. We're focused on protecting trade routes, defending civilian populations, and ensuring that disputes can be resolved through diplomatic means rather than military action. Commander Torres, who had become Alex's chief of staff, stepped forward with a datapad. Honorable delegates, since the Haven Defense Corps was established 6 months ago, we have intervened in 12 situations involving threats to civilian populations. In every case, we resolved the conflict with minimal force and maximum preservation of life. A series of holographic displays showed the interventions. Pirates threatening passenger liners, illegal military actions against mining colonies, and territorial disputes that threatened to escalate into warfare. In each case, Alex's forces had used innovative tactics to achieve decisive results without causing unnecessary casualties. These actions, Alex explained, demonstrate the philosophy behind the Defense Corps. We don't seek to dominate or control. We seek to protect and preserve. When military action is necessary, we use the minimum force required to achieve peaceful resolution. The Draknari general stood again, his scaled face showing the respect warriors gave to capable leaders. Your tactics are sound, your results impressive. But what happens when you face an enemy that cannot be defeated through precision and coordination? What happens when the galaxy faces a threat that requires Magnus Carter's methods rather than Alex Carter's ideals? Alex met the general's gaze steadily. Then I'll adapt to meet that threat, just as my father adapted to meet the challenges of his time. But I'll do it in a way that preserves what makes our civilization worth defending. Empty words, said a delegate from the Frontier Alliance. How do we know you won't become another warlord when tested by real adversity? Before Alex could respond, alarms began sounding throughout Unity Station. Emergency lights bathed the council chamber in red. Illumination as automated systems announced a priority. Alert. Unknown vessels entering the system, announced the station's defense coordinator through the communication system. Multiple contacts, origin unidentified, configuration not matching any known species. The chamber's main display activated, showing the tactical situation around Unity Station. Dozens of ships had emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their design unlike anything in the galactic databases. They moved with precision that suggested advanced technology and military coordination. Speaker Vale rose from her position, her psychic abilities allowing her to sense the fear spreading through the assembly. All delegates are to remain in the chamber until the situation is resolved. Alex studied the tactical display, his enhanced military instincts analyzing the unknown fleet's formation and approach vector. Something about their movements seemed familiar, though he couldn't identify why. Those aren't explorers or traders, he said quietly to Commander Torres. That's an invasion fleet. As if responding to his observation, the unknown ships began transmitting on all frequencies. The voice that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything the galaxy had heard before, with harmonics that suggested a non-biological origin. Attention, biological species of this galaxy. We are the Convergence. We have observed your conflicts, your inefficiencies, your chaotic approach to resource management. We have come to impose order through technological integration. Resistance will be processed as system errors and corrected. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions as delegates realized they were facing something beyond their experience. The unknown fleet wasn't interested in negotiation or diplomacy. They were announcing conquest with the cold certainty of a computer program. General Korath looked at Alex with new understanding. Young Carter, it appears the galaxy may need Magnus Carter's heir more than Alex Carter's ideals. Alex nodded grimly, watching as the unknown ships moved into attack formation around Unity Station. Then they'll get both, he said, his voice carrying the confidence that had made his father legendary. Commander Torres, signal our fleet. All Defense Corps vessels are to converge on Unity Station immediately. We only have 18 ships in the sector, Torres warned. Alex smiled, though his eyes remained focused on the tactical display. Then we'll have to be 18 times more effective than they expect. It's time to show the galaxy why the Carter name became legendary in the first place. The quiet student who had wanted nothing more than to study history was about to make history himself, fighting not for conquest or glory, but for the survival of everything his father had helped build. The real test of Magnus Carter's legacy was about to begin. He looked like a student. But the galaxy witnessed a warlord's heir. Part 6. The battle for Unity Station raged for 18 hours, but Alex Carter's real victory took 5 years to achieve. Today he stood in the renovated command center of what had once been the Galactic Council's meeting hall, now serving as headquarters for the Integrated Defense Alliance. Through the reinforced windows he could see ships from 50 different species working together in coordinated patrol formations. The convergence threat had changed everything. When faced with an enemy that sought to eliminate biological life entirely, the galaxy's squabbling species had no choice but to unite or face extinction. Alex had provided both the tactical leadership to win the war and the diplomatic vision to build lasting peace afterward. Admiral Carter, said Commander Torres, approaching with a datapad containing the day's reports. The title still felt strange to Alex, who remembered when his biggest concern was passing Professor Wells' military history exam. What's the situation in the Outer Rim? Alex asked, reviewing the intelligence summaries. Quiet for the first time in months, Torres replied. The last convergence holdout was eliminated from the Deneb system yesterday. Their technology has been secured for study, and the affected worlds are beginning reconstruction. Alex nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. The war against the Convergence had required tactics his father never could have imagined. Enemy ships that could adapt to conventional weapons, artificial intelligences that learned from every engagement, and technology that could convert biological matter into mechanical components. Victory had come not through superior firepower, but through the cooperation of species that had never trusted each other before. "Admiral," said a familiar voice from the entrance. "I hope you have time for an old friend." Alex turned to see Corvin approaching, his green scales now bearing the scars of combat and the insignia of a Draknari fleet commander. Behind him walked Lyra, whose psychic abilities had proven crucial during the war, and Professor Wells, whose historical knowledge had helped decode Convergence tactical patterns. "Always," Alex said, embracing his former roommate. "How are the new recruits adapting to integrated training?" "Better than expected," Corvin replied. "Young warriors from all species seem to understand cooperation more easily than their elders. Your teaching methods are spreading throughout the military academies." Alex had revolutionized military education by emphasizing protection over conquest, coordination over dominance, and strategic thinking over brute force. The Carter Doctrine, as historians were calling it, represented a fundamental shift in how galactic civilizations approached both warfare and peacekeeping. Lyra studied Alex with her large eyes, her psychic abilities allowing her to sense the weight of responsibility he carried. "You look tired," she observed. "When was the last time you took leave?" "Leaders don't get leave during reconstruction periods," Alex said, though he smiled to soften the response. "There's too much work to be done." Professor Wells laughed, his scarred face showing genuine affection. "That's exactly what your father would have said. Magnus Carter never knew when to rest either." The comparison to his father still made Alex pause. Over the years he had learned more about Magnus Carter's life and legacy. The brilliant tactician who had united humanity's colonies. The ruthless commander who had eliminated threats before they could grow dangerous. The complex man who had balanced idealism with pragmatism in ways that shaped the modern galaxy. "I'm not him," Alex said quietly. "I hope I never have to be." "No," Wells agreed, "you're something better. You're what he would have become if he had lived to see the galaxy at peace." Through the command center's windows, they could see the bustling activity of Unity Station's expanded facilities. Research laboratories where former enemies worked together to understand Convergence technology. Diplomatic quarters where species representatives hammered out trade agreements and territorial disputes. Training facilities where the next generation of defenders learned to think beyond the limitations of their individual cultures. "Report from the Council," Torres announced, approaching with another datapad. "The Mentari delegation has agreed to share their psychic defense techniques with other species. The Draknari Empire is opening 3 military academies to non-warrior races, and the Robotech Collective is providing technological upgrades to any world that requests them." Alex reviewed the reports with satisfaction. The war against the Convergence had proven that cooperation was more effective than competition, that diversity was strength rather than weakness, and that protection was more valuable than conquest. "There's something else," Torres added, his expression more serious. "Intelligence reports indicate activity in the unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. Unknown signals, ship movements that don't match any known species." Alex nodded thoughtfully. There would always be new threats, new challenges that required the galaxy's defenders to adapt and grow. But now they faced those challenges together, with unified purpose and shared resources. "Schedule a meeting with the Alliance Council," Alex said. "If there are new dangers emerging, we need to be prepared." "Yes, sir," Torres replied, then hesitated. "Admiral, there's one more thing." A message came through on the old military frequencies. Someone claiming to know information about your father's final mission. Alex felt the familiar chill that came with reminders of his mysterious past. Even after all these years, Magnus Carter's legacy continued to reveal new secrets. "Set up a secure meeting," he decided. "But keep security protocols active. After everything we've been through, I'm not taking chances with unknown contacts." As his friends and staff dispersed to handle their various responsibilities, Alex remained in the command center, looking out at the peaceful activity of Unity Station. Ships from dozens of worlds moved in coordinated patterns, their crews working together with efficiency that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. His personal communicator chimed with an incoming message from Haven Prime University. The sender was listed as Dean of Students, but Alex recognized the communication code. It was from his old dormitory room where new students were probably struggling with the same questions about identity and purpose that had once troubled him. The message was simple. The galaxy is safer because you chose to be a protector instead of a conqueror. Your father would be proud of what you've built. A grateful student, Alex smiled, remembering the uncertain young man who had arrived at the university with nothing but worn textbooks and mysterious dreams. That student had wanted to understand history without being forced to make it. Instead, he had become history, though not in the way anyone expected. The boy who had looked like a student had indeed proven to be a warlord's heir. But he had chosen to inherit his father's tactical genius while rejecting his methods, to embrace his bloodline strength while using it to build rather than destroy. Outside the windows, patrol ships from the Integrated Defense Alliance maintained their vigilant watch over the galaxy's trade routes and civilian populations. Young officers from dozens of species coordinated their movements with precision, learned at academies that taught cooperation alongside combat. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of Magnus Carter's son, and learned that some legacies could be transformed rather than simply inherited. Alex Carter had proven that strength could inspire rather than intimidate, that leadership could unify rather than divide, and that the greatest victories came not from conquering enemies but from turning them into allies. In the end, he had become exactly what the galaxy needed. Not another warlord to be feared, but a guardian to be trusted with its future. The student had become the teacher, and his lesson would echo through the stars for generations to come.